Hello, I'm Zach Hottel, Archivist with the Shenandoah County Library in Edinburgh, Virginia. I'd like to welcome you to the video today where I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we do as a small local history site to collect, preserve, and share the history of our community with various researchers and community groups around our area and really around the world. I hope you'll enjoy. So behind me is our reading room space. Here we welcome on average about 1,500 researchers a year who come to learn either about their family history or some aspect of Shenandoah County's history, whether it be a business or some macroeconomic question or an individual that lived here who has a connection with some other community or some of our broader history of the area or our country. To do that, we have a staff of myself as our full-time archivist and about 3 to 4 volunteers that work on various projects, including research assistants for individuals who can't visit the area, digitization projects, and a whole lot more. Like a lot of local history archives, we began as a reference collection in the 1980s when our public library opened. Then in 2000, an archives collection was added and an archivist was hired for the first time. We retained that reference collection to help researchers get their bearings when they come here, but also to do a lot of intensive research into various organizations and also family histories. Behind me is the most popular part of that reference collection, and it's our family histories. We retain about 500 to 600 family histories related to families that either lived in Shenandoah County, Shenandoah Valley, or Virginia as a whole. These contain research that has already been conducted by other individuals that is then accessed by researchers who visit here to learn more about their genealogy and family tree. Some other important parts of the collections here at the Shenandoah County Library's Truban Archives are our family folders, which is research files containing information collected by various researchers about families and genealogy records from our communities, a historic site survey documenting historic structures in Shenandoah County, and last but not least, our microfilm collection. Our microfilm collection is relatively popular here because a part of it contains 12 newspapers published in Shenandoah County starting in about 1807 through today. We have partnerships with the surviving newspapers and various historic organizations that own the copies of ones that are out of print to retain those here and make those accessible to the public. While a lot of places have transitioned away from the microfilm as newspapers are digitized, we really don't have the resources to do that. So instead we work to improve access to the microfilm copies that we have here so that through indexes and things so that they can be better used by potential researchers. Also on microfilm, we have various other collections that historically were microfilmed to provide access that aren't available anywhere else. And also local records such as marriages, wills, land records that allow us to provide public access to those when our circuit court clerk, who is responsible for legal records in Virginia, doesn't really have the resources to do that. We also retain other things like census records and things that are sometimes accessed by researchers here. Behind me are 4 items from collections that I wanted to highlight that we hold here at the Truban Archives. The first of these is a ledger from what's called Baker's Store. Baker's Store was a general store in the western part of Shenandoah County that operated from just before the Civil War until the 1970s. We hold the business records from this store throughout the entire time it was owned and operated by the Baker family. The Baker family also operated what is called locally as a huckster business, where they would take produce and eggs and other items from local farmers, purchase them, and then sell them in Northern Virginia and the Washington, D.C. area. Part of this collection documents that business from the late 19th through about the mid-20th century. These records help show evidence of the impact of agriculture and commercial enterprises in small town and small communities here in Shenandoah County throughout most of the 19th and 20th century. Beside this is a yearbook from Edinburgh High School dated from 1956. Part of our mission at the Truban Archives is to collect yearbooks from all Shenandoah County schools. Currently, there are 10 schools that operate within our county and about 15 historic schools that also produced yearbooks. We retain items from all of those, dating to around the 1920s. We also collect and retain yearbooks related to 2 private schools that operated here in the county. These are some of the more popular items from the archives because they showcase individuals in readily accessible format for people doing research on either their family members or the schools themselves. Beside it are 2 photographs from our George W. Smith collection. George W. Smith, who's pictured in the top image, was a local amateur photographer who took hundreds of pictures in our community during the 1980s and 1990s. These capture everyday life, a lot of local events, and a lot of changes in our community scenery. He also kept a large number of negatives that he was able to acquire in various ways of other more historic imagery. Below is an example of that. This is an undated, unidentified baseball team that probably operated here in the 1940s and 1950s based on the evidence associated with this collection. We retain his negatives in print format, but they help document a lot of everyday life here in our community during that period because they were not only produced by professional photographers, but also local individuals taking amateur snapshots. And finally, we have a ledger from what was called Shenandoah Iron and Coal Company. Shenandoah Iron and Coal Company was a business reiteration of what began as Liberty Iron Furnace in Shenandoah County in 1812 and would operate until 1917 when the iron furnace finally closed for good. We hold a collection of business records from the various commercial enterprises that operated this, dating to 1912 through their closure in 1917. The bulk of these records are from the last half of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th century. They contain not only the ledgers from the iron furnace such as this one, but also records from the railroad operated by the company to ship iron ore and other businesses that they operated, including stores, mills, tanneries, and bark collection. This is also incredibly important because the iron furnace was the scene of several racially charged confrontations over economic opportunity here in the second half of the 20th century. Welcome to the archival storage of Shenandoah County Library's Truban Archives. Like most places, our archival storage is too small and inadequate for our future needs. When we opened in 2000, the architects for our building simply converted a book repair and cataloging space into archival storage. Since then, we've done a lot of work to make do with the space that we were given. However, our collections have grown dramatically since then and really exponentially over the past 5 years. When we began acquiring archival material 23 years ago, the focus was on singular, expensive, and very rare items, such as a tax book or a single ledger. Since then, we've changed that to focus on personal papers, photograph collections, business records, larger scale and more inclusive items that really tell a more broad and complete history of different organizations and the people that lived here. This means that our space crunch has only gotten worse, but it's incredibly important for us to broaden our mission to really cover more than singular snapshots in time or the early part of our community's history. Like a lot of other places, not only does this serve as archival storage, but it does have other purposes, including our scanning station and storage of some pre-processed materials. Thankfully, several years ago, we were able to acquire off-site space that allows us to conduct processing not inside of our storage facility. Part of the collections that we hold here are not only photograph collections and journals, business records, but also personal papers, church records, research information compiled by local historians, and a lot more. This really allows us to tell a very complete and broad story of our community's history, including in very many underserved areas, including the economically disadvantaged and various minorities. We have made it our mission over the past few years to double down on our efforts to increase these holdings and have had some fairly decent success. Well, I hope you enjoyed this series of videos on the Shenandoah County Library's Truban Archives. Our hope was to highlight the work of a small local history site and the things that we have been able to accomplish here. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, you can visit us at countylib.org, or you can visit our digital collection, which is archives.countylib.org. I hope you've enjoyed it.